Wesley. I'm with BrightTag. BrightTag is focused on taking the whole concept of a pixel call out of the equation. So basically a tagless data distribution platform. So in lieu of loading 3, 4, 10 different partner tags on a site, we do it all on the server side.
Name is Graham Mudd. I'm a VP of Search and Media at Comscore. Comscore is a internet research and strategy company. We do a lot of audience measurement, which is probably how we're most well known, but we also do a lot of custom research on behalf of our clients. We use data well, we are a data company, so that's pretty much all we do.
Russell Glass, the CEO of Bizzo. We're a business audience marketing platform, which helps ad networks, exchanges, publishers reach business audiences more effectively, and we also provide analytics to measure who, from a business demographic perspective, is coming to your sites.
Hi, my name is Zachary Colas. I'm the CEO of Trigit. Trigit's what's called a demand-side platform, and so we're a technology platform that looks at who you are and what page you're looking at every time you open up a content window and decide how much we think you're worth and what ad to serve you billions and billions of times a day. So we use that data to figure out which the right ad to show you in that moment as you're opening up any website that has ads on it.
Great. Well, I'll start with the fun question. I think that for a lot of us, the real-time personalized web and all the data it requires is kind of like a scene from Minority Report. And I think that we have this shared vision of basically what is all the data around a person that we can that helps us target the right ad in real time to that person to help spur this marketplace. So I guess I should ask, is that the vision of how advertising should work? And how is the industry right now changing to kind of fit the vision if we all even share the same vision?
I'll jump on that one. It's a good grenade to jump on. Yeah, I mean, I think Minority Report is a great example of how people can take what effectively is a farce and turn it into an explanation for how they think the world is going to become. I mean, clearly, the Minority Report, it was intended as an entertainment, as a movie, and it was intended to be provocative. But when it comes to advertising, the equation is relatively simple. There's no reason to serve me ads for women's fragrances. There's no reason to serve me ads for diapers, hopefully, not yet for a little while. There's no reason to serve me a lot of ads. And there's no reason why, as a consumer, I would want to see any of those ads. So as marketers, what our goal is to figure out how to serve you advertisement that's relevant, meaningful, timely, and important to you so that the advertiser gets value, you get value, and by removing a lot of that waste, we're able to pay publishers of that content more for their inventory. They're able to make more money, and they're able to use that money to create more good content that makes the internet a better place. So I think outside of sort of the scandalization and the sort of the farcical nature of movies, in reality, it's a pretty basic equation that makes sense for everybody.
Right. I mean, I guess what I would say is if you look at search, right, search probably figured this out probably earlier than any other online ad medium. The reason Google makes as much money as it does is because it has an amazing relevance signal. And, you know, we just need to do the same type of thing for display advertising. Relevance can certainly be behavior, but it can be lots of other things as well. And when you figure that out, marketers flood towards, towards that medium or that channel. They spend lots of money, and you do lots of interesting things with it. Google's done lots of amazing things for the world with the money that it makes, and I think you're making the same pitch, but probably more for the display side and video.
Yeah, I mean, in search, good, not to jump in on this, but I think he's exactly right. In search, you go to this little box and you type into that box exactly what you're looking for. You tell Google exactly what you want in that moment in time, and you like Google because it gives you exactly back what you actually want. That's data and relevancy and value. And both sides of the equation, and all three sides of the equation, see a tremendous amount of value in that scenario. In display, that signal doesn't exist. There's no little white box that you type into every page you go to telling us what you're looking for, and so we have to extrapolate what that is using data. But at the end of the day, it's the same equation as search. We're trying to provide you value, and we're trying to provide content providers value.
So towards this vision of basically providing the most value to the customer based on the ad that they actually want to be seeing, in this conference, there's a lot of startups, a lot of businesses in the business providing new streams of data. And some of you on this panel are providing new streams of data. What type of data do you want to see more of in order to provide more relevant advertising? And if it, actually, I'll just stop myself and ask that question. What kind of data do you guys need next?
well, we're a data provider, so I mean, what we, what we'd like to see is, I mean, for example, IP geolocation helps you understand where somebody is. So what I'd like to see is more ways in which we can then take other data, for example, whether it's demographic data, whether there's preference data, whether there's semantic data you can get from Twitter, for example, to figure out how happy are people in San Francisco this week, or for example, you may want to add other pieces of data that help you then pivot based on what we have. And one of the things that we'd like to do ourselves and we're working on is trying to make the accuracy of location better. Because I think it's a very important signal outside of search. I think it's probably one of the most important signals for all kinds of media, whether it's content, it's advertising, and even analytics.
Yeah, just to add to that, and I think talking to some of the people that are at this conference, and the reason you're at this conference to begin with is trying to figure out, well, what is the future of data? What is the next big thing in data, and how can I capitalize on it? How do I start a company around it? One of the things I see out there, and one of the answers to what do I want to see next, well, it's really real data. It's kind of like that real cheese commercial, right? Where there's a ton of cheese whiz out there right now in the data space. And part of it is it's just so hard to measure. It's so hard to actually know, is this real or is this not real? I'm looking for sort of a removal of all the cheese whiz and companies to really start to focus on higher and higher quality data, data that obviously is focused on creating a much better experience for the users, as well as a much more elegant web for the users, but a better return on investment for the advertisers.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with the technology stack, right? I mean, I think going back to how can you track some of that information and keep it fresh, right? As you're saying, real data, it comes from real transactions, right? You can sort of scrape a whole lot of data, but then how recent is it? How relevant is it? And which user now in real time? I mean, I really think that over the last 24 months, the big revolution that's happened in advertising is real-time bidding, right? So every ad on every exchange ideally should be sort of sold over real-time bidding. And what that does is it lets the bidders have a sense in real time of the context for that ad. So if I can now understand, certain segment information, whether it's behavioral, whether it's location, whether it's content and context, that really helps, solve that specific problem. And I think that more and more of display media should be transacted over real-time bidding.
In case anyone in this room doesn't know what real-time bidding is, because it's a little complicated. The way it actually works is when you go to a website, when you're opening a website, any website, in the background what happens is that website calls out to what's called an exchange. So that would be Google or Yahoo or any of other providers, and basically says to that exchange, hey, do you have an ad for me in this moment in time, literally in milliseconds as you're opening up that page. And what the exchange does is it actually calls out to a large number of providers like our company, many of us, and they basically say in real time, this user ID just showed up on this URL. Are you interested in bidding for that user? And then what we do is we use data from companies like Russ and Quova and a whole bunch of other people to look at that user and say, oh, we think this guy is valuable for Amazon or for Kodak or for any other of our clients who wants to buy this advertisement, and we submit a bid. And this whole process happens in about 120 milliseconds. So in the real time that it takes you to open up a page in the background, all of these companies are making decisions about what ad is best to serve you, and it uses a marketplace mechanism, bidding in an auction, to basically assign the right ad to you.
So essentially, if you're a data company out there trying to create new data that you think you want to have the ad ecosystem be a customer of yours, I think you have to look at real-time bidding and make sure that you can sort of go to a platform like Trigit and others and be able to make your data available in a way that your customers can consume it. Because I mean, part of the whole challenge any company sort of has to face is, okay, I have this data, now what can I do with it, and how soon can I make it available for customers to start buying it? And so that's sort of one thing to look at.
The one thing that we do see at BrightTag, and this is that there is a lot of folks in the space, and whether there might be cheese for one company but not cheese for another, or as far as cheese whiz. But the method I think that the industry is used to going about it in regards to piggybacking all the pixels in is we see it as being flawed, I think, as the business scales, because you not only have your bid management, your ad server, your affiliate system, your email service provider pixels in place and your site analytics, but now you're going to have a few key partners like a Triget or a BlueKai or a Datomi. But then the other challenge it brings is with the way that we're deploying this today with the slew of JavaScript tags and people piggybacking other tags in, this is where I think the rub is between marketing and IT, where marketing wants to work with as many partners as possible and find out who's good at driving what, but then IT, one of their key metrics is how fast the site is responding so that latency of the page doesn't choke conversion. So I think that our point is that that right now the way that people are going about tapping into all this data is slightly flawed because of that issue.
So then we've mentioned that getting access to all these new channels of data and how to kind of route it correctly. Startups are producing data, what kind of data is right for which marketplace. Data and sourcing is one challenge. Another challenge we mentioned is the technology stack and having the technology to handle tons of data and real data in real time. What are some other challenges facing the vision of a real-time personalized advertising? Do you feel that like privacy policies might be holding back progress, or is it just users' acclimation to acknowledging, yes, the web is now showing me smart ads and this is good? Like, what are the other roadblocks to the vision?
I can maybe take a swing. I would say there's two that come at least initially to mind. The first is data at scale, and what I guess I mean by that is, there's lots of sources of information about, for instance, when a consumer's interested in buying a car. If you're BMW and you want to reach that consumer, sure, you might as well buy every single one of those people that fits the right demographic and is looking for the kind of car you sell. But a huge percentage of BMW's ad budget is not right at the bottom of the funnel when they're about to make the transaction. It's up higher when they are trying to convince the 23-year-old who doesn't have the money to buy a BMW right now that when he does have the money in 10 years or whatever, that BMW should be the right one. It's branding, right? And so how do you do that at scale using really intelligent data? That, I think, is probably a barrier to moving a lot of money online and a lot of money towards data-driven marketing. Second one I would say is really scalable tools for understanding what data works, right? So basically being able to cull the cheese whiz from the cheese, to use this now ubiquitous analogy. I think that is really important, right? If you're going to do data-driven marketing, you have to spend more money, right? There's a premium there, and that premium may be worth it, it may not be worth it. Evaluating that is what companies like Triget do. But I think to do that really at scale across lots and lots of data partners, maybe there aren't the perfect tools in the toolbox yet for that.
Yeah, one of the major problems that advertising in general has on the internet is that it doesn't have very good measurement once you get beyond search. And so with search, measurement's pretty easy. If people click on your ads, if they click on your ads, they convert, they buy a product. You can measure if that dollar was spent or not spent, and you can measure it very easily off the click path. Analytics software has been built to track those clicks really, really well. You can measure the whole thing. It's super easy to do. The problem is that display advertising on the internet, they're like billboards, they're like TV commercials, they're like print advertisements. They're consumed by people when their modality is not about the advertisement. It's not about searching for their next new car. It's when they're reading about Britney Spears, or they're reading about the new nature shows, or they're watching the Eagles about to hatch, or whatever it is that they're doing. They're not interested in your commercial message at that point in time. Even though they absorb that commercial message and they think about it and you develop awareness that way, they don't interact with it. Click-through rates on banner ads are virtually zero. It's because the user isn't interested in clicking, they're interested in what they're doing at that point in time. So the trick is how do you measure something where the active engagement is not happening in that moment in time, and how do you build measurement tools to solve this attribution problem? And for marketers, how to sort the wheat from the chaff and figure out what's cheese and what's not is really difficult, because those tools aren't very good right now with display advertising and advertising on the internet in general.
I'll give you a simple example. You walk into a store because you're thirsty and you're looking for a soda. You see Coke and you see OMG Cola. You're going to go right for the Coke, right? It's a safe choice. You know what it is. You've had it before. But if the day before you had seen a banner ad that said OMG Cola, tastes like Coke but entirely organic, when you walk into that store, you're now prepared to make a different decision. You see OMG Cola, you said, oh, it tastes like Coke. It's entirely organic. I'll give it a try. That measurement, right, understanding how you made that decision at the point of purchase, at the point of decision. It's a very difficult thing to measure. And yet that's what display advertising is able to do. It's able to change purchase decision, yet you're not going to see a click, you're not going to see someone come to a website, but they've made a change in decision behavior. How do you measure that is going to be a huge part of how online advertising revenue grows.
And just to maybe give a quick, I guess, overview of the tools that are available now. I mean, you can do that measurement, but it's really expensive. There's a lot of process involved, and it's not something that you can do on every campaign.
It's reserved for the big boys.
Right, and companies like mine do that type of thing, but I think what we need to do and what we are working on doing is building something that you can do every single time you run one of these campaigns, so you can say, I should use data source A, not B next time.
It costs like 50 grand a campaign. I mean, or 25, 50 grand a campaign. Nobody can afford to do that unless you're Coke. If you're OMG Soda, you throw the money out there and you hope your sales go up, and you're like, oh look, sales went up. Maybe the advertising did it.
That's right.
But too many advertisers are basically firing money into the dark blind right now, and small and medium-sized advertisers are definitely doing it that way outside of search.
Yeah, I think just one thing to add to your question is, and we're not going to turn this into a privacy panel, but we're playing with more data now in this space for retargeting than what DoubleClick was playing with when they bought Abacus, as far as how quickly we can leverage the data. So I think making sure that your privacy policies do line up with actually what you're doing with the data is important. Otherwise, I think it'll set the industry back. A, and I think B, I think everybody in the industry that's working with this data just needs to handle it with care, because that will set the industry back.
And all this data we're talking about, it ends up creating a story around the user, and the user is becoming more and more comfortable with it. Besides your own businesses, in finding and in analyzing this kind of the user's data narrative, consisting of all of the social, geo, XYZ data that they're creating on the internet, what opportunities do you see for startups to kind of pick up the slack and help you guys out with analyzing a user's complete data story?
I'll sort of start there. I think what you don't see out there, I think you see people doing vertical data, right? For example, we do geo data, Bizzo does business data, there's a whole bunch of BlueKai does behavioral data. There isn't a single company that ties it all together, right? So maybe if there is a company out there that says, okay, every time a user shows up, I'll sort of tie all of the above together and then present that as a continuum story. It obviously has to be seen. I mean, a lot of that today I think is done by the demand side platforms to sort of take this and try to make sense of it. But I think it's a job that probably a startup outside can really sort of do sort of a better analysis of signal to noise ratio when all of these data points come together. So I think that's a big opportunity to sort of tie it together and provide one sort of complete picture of a user.
Great. Yeah, I have a slightly maybe different perspective. I think startups most often fail. Startups that are properly capitalized most often fail because they don't focus on the right, very specific problem, right? They end up trying to do too much. They end up trying to create way too many signals, and they end up diluting their actual value. So I actually think the opportunity here is to be hyper-focused, right? Solve a very specific problem in the data space. Our example was we solved it for business professionals, and because of that, we can do that better than anybody else on the planet, right? We have guys solving for location. We have guys solving for the Hispanic market, right? Be very focused on what you're solving for, and down the line, you'll have a situation where others can help put that together for more than just the specific use you're solving it for.
That's great. Well, I'd like to open up to questions from the audience. So if anyone has a question for the panel, you can just yell it.
So actually, that argument is something that gets thrown a lot in the industry, but I think it's commonly misunderstood. Yeah. So as a publisher, you create an audience of people. Let's just say there's people in the room. This is your audience. They all come to your website. each and every one of the people in this audience has a different value, and there's a different set of advertisers who would like to reach those people. And there's a totally different set of advertisers than if your audience was a group of people who were watching a Giants game. And those would have a completely different set of advertisers that they want to reach. And so one of the great innovations around real-time bidding in the exchanges is that if you create a really highly valuable audience like this, and you put that audience into an exchange, you're not putting it into a commodity pool and saying my audience is the same as everybody else. Because with real-time bidding, when I have a client that wants to reach somebody in this room, maybe a network storage provider or someone who's doing some cool stuff with data, they're going to pay a very high premium because the people in this room are incredibly valuable. The same reason why people pay a lot of money to sponsor conferences like this is because there's a lot of value in this audience. And so advertisers now being able to differentiate user by user and just reach the people that they want to reach actually brings significantly more value to you as a publisher who's able to aggregate a lot of valuable people as opposed to a lot of unvaluable people who are maybe only good for Coke or lower value advertisers. So it's actually a good thing for you, I would argue, on margin.
I would 100% agree with everything he just said. I think the only other thing I would add to it is that it's not a mutually exclusive game, right? If you have a sales force and you want to sell your audience because you believe in the value of the context and the brand that you bring to the table, do that, and you can do both at the same time. And one doesn't have to necessarily compete with the other. Well, they compete with each other, I guess, but they don't have to. They don't have to replace the other.
Yeah, and I think just to add to, again, I agree with what both these guys said. I think another thing that publishers could do, large publishers could do, is sort of leverage the external data ecosystem to sort of augment their own premium advertising, right? I mean, I think some of them are already doing that. So this is, and the question that you said, which is, am I creating content? Am I trying to create ads? I think it's those are two different departments, right? I mean, I think there's a revenue department that has to go figure out, how the hell we're going to make money. And I think those are the guys that really have to focus on both sort of your own premium ads where you may be selling directly, but then leveraging the external data ecosystem. And for example, an exchange might know a lot about, or a third-party data provider might know a lot about a user coming to your site that you as a publisher have no idea about. So, why not use that data and sort of, leverage it?
And just to add something briefly, as a publisher, if you understand your audiences better than anybody else, or at least as well as anybody else, you have a tremendous advantage, right? It's kind of like being in a poker game where you get to see someone else's hand before you bet.
Yep.
Because if you understand that this person on your site's a CEO, or you understand that this is someone who's in market for a BMW, before you give that impression away, you can price it. You can set a reserve on that impression.
Yep.
So to me, it's incumbent on publishers to really understand audiences and not complain that everybody else is bidding on their inventory, but understand their audiences and set pricing effectively.
It also creates a good opportunity for large and even small publishers, where if you have a certain amount of inventory and if it's sold, with all the exchanges and retargeting capabilities, you could actually sell your audience against other inventory. So it actually will increase the opportunity for a publisher.
Yep.
Great. One more question. All right, and we have a microphone.
Get that one day.
Lovely Noreen.
Hi, so my name's Kalia, and my handle's Identity Woman, and I've been focused on user-centric identity for a long time. And I really think that this industry is not thinking very creatively about how they actually engage with individuals and their data, because quite frankly, hearing you say like, oh, we should just be really careful, but we're going to compile incredibly detailed digital dossiers of people's lives without their involvement is kind of scary. So what about a model where people have personal data stores and they collect their own data, and you all run interesting apps that help them get ads when they want to go across the web, but that there's a real opportunity to shift the whole model of how this is done so you all get what you want and it's not totally creepy for people?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is yes. I mean, would love to have. Part of the problem is it's very hard to do, right? There's no standards for personal data lockers, for example, as you're talking about. There's companies like Singly who are trying to create
and
this.
And Azigo.
Okay,
Paul,
great.
Wave.
Great. So there's I think I think the answer to your question is yes. I mean, it would be nice if there's a way for consumers to be compensated in some fashion for opting in and giving that data to to all of the ecosystem, whether it's publishers, whether it's ad networks, what have you. I think it's just a hard problem to solve right now. The other challenge is there's so much confusion out there. There's cookies, there's opting out of this, there's opting out of that. So I mean, I think at the end of the day, the solution will come from somebody who can sort of create a plugin which fits in a browser and sort of helps me sort of understand all the data that I'm creating and share it. And I think part of the problem is I think consumers shouldn't get ahead of themselves and say, oh my God, you got to pay me for this. I think what you're getting already is free content, right? And I think that really is what you're getting in exchange. I think you ought to sort of feel a responsibility for contributing your interest to the ecosystem so that publishers like our friend up there can really make more revenue.
Yeah, I would say